You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the BioHealth Capital Region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in BioHealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis, your host for BioTalk, and we are really excited to have a CEO in the BioHealth Capital Region. We're going to talk about a new award, Helen Sabzevari, who is the president and CEO of Precigen in Germantown, who was just named the Maryland Tech Council CEO of the Year for 2025, and she's going to be our guest on BioTalk today. So Helen, congratulations on your award, and we're excited to hear everything about Precigen, and the listeners are interested to know about the new news you have with your exciting pipeline of technologies.
Thank you so much, Rich, and thank you for having me and the Precigen as part of this program. We look forward to definitely speaking more about our platforms and organization.
Great. Thank you very much, Helen, and congratulations again. And I'm sure there's going to be some press that your company will be sending out on your award. So one of the things our listeners like to do is to get an introduction to the podcast guest. And so the best way to do that is not me read from your resume. It's for you to introduce yourself to the listeners. So if you don't mind, please give us a little bit of your history and background and how you ended up being the CEO of Precigen.
Sure. Thank you, Rich. So I was educated in the United States and received my PhD in basically cancer immunology. And at that time, it used to be called immunotherapy. And this is, I always refer to when it was not very chic and in point. I have obviously studied both field of the cancer and immunology, and then did my postdoctoral work at Scripps. And during that time, I worked on actually the first group of immunotherapeutic antibodies that now it's approved for neuroblastoma. During my postdoc, actually, that was my topics at Scripps Research. And then I decided to do a second postdoc in the field of autoimmunity, also at Scripps. And the reason for it was not to revert to the autoimmunity, but my feeling was that if you understand how basically you can super activate the immune system, which is what happens during the autoimmune diseases, then you can use that knowledge in the side of the cancer immuno-oncology or immunotherapy and activate the immune system to recognize the cancer cells. And then after that, I finished my second postdoc in the autoimmune field. I decided to revert back with what I had learned to the field of the immunotherapy, which, as I mentioned, at that time in the late 1990s, this was not in fashion and it was not a chic. There were very few labs and organizations that they were involved in that. And I joined the NIH at that point to basically lead a translational molecular immunology groups that basically was working from the bedside to bench on immunotherapies and with one of the most advanced groups at NIH. And I had my tenure at NIH, and from there I was asked to join Merck KGaA to start the therapeutic area of immuno-oncology. Globally, I became the head of the immuno-oncology therapeutic area and build a portfolio there, which one of the first from discovery to the commercialization was the anti-PD-L1 avelumab that we brought forward and basically got approval for. And then from there, I had built as a co-founder of BioTalk. And then I was asked to join as head of the health in Intraxon, which eventually Intraxon decided that there will be focusing completely on health. And in 2020, Precigen was formed, which is completely dedicated to the cell and gene therapy and looking at the rare diseases and also oncology. And included in that is also autoimmunity. and I was asked to become the CEO and president of Precigen in 2020. And I have had the privilege of leading a very, very talented team at Precigen, unlike anything that I have seen. And I think the progress that this team and Precigen has made in the past 40 years to take a drug from discovery all the way now, we are at the cusp of PDUFA, and it has been really amazing. So I'm really privileged to stand as the CEO and president of such an innovative and talented team.
Well, I think Helen, Precigen's lucky to have you because your career path is one that is really representative of someone who is qualified to be the CEO of an emerging life science company. When you basically get your PhDs, then you go to NIH. And I understand when you were at NIH, you got a merit award there while you were there. So congratulations. And then evolving into big pharma at Merck. Then you get into the entrepreneurial world and getting experience in the small and emerging bio businesses. And so you were a natural asked to be the CEO of Precigen back in 2020. So I think people would be jealous to have your background to evolve to where you have today. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So now that we've introduced Precigen as a 5-year-old company located in Germantown, in the BioHealth capital region, let's tell the listeners about Precigen, why it was formed, around what key technologies, how it's evolved to where it is today, and where is your focus?
So when we formed Precigen, we were really focusing on 2 major platforms, both in a cell and gene therapy. Having been in the field of immuno-oncology from the very, very beginning, from the time that nobody believed it will be really successful to the point of the success that we have seen now in the past decade or so coming up, it became very clear for me, knowing that the next cutting edge of immuno-oncology was really in a cell and gene therapy. And we have had discussions in the field for many, many years around the fact of precision medicine and how do you apply the precision medicine, which will be very, very important, first of all, for a patient population, because the whole point of precision medicine is about the fact that you don't treat everybody with everything, which more than 70, 80% of times doesn't work for certain patients. It's only 15, 20% of the time that certain therapies, even such as chemotherapies, are working for certain patients. And it becomes very important that we develop innovative medicine that is specifically addresses the patients, and it reduces the toxicities and the issues, side effects that are associated with that. And also, at the same junction, what we have to do when we talk about precision medicine is you increase the rate of success. That 20%, 30% response rates are not acceptable. We need to do better. So with that understanding, we really form the Precigen and look at the platforms at hand and making sure that we are coming up with the platforms that they are not another Me Too platform in a reality of this situation, that we are advancing something by maybe, and this is important, not that that is not important, incremental changes, but somehow we use a differentiated platform that we can make a larger leap and address more diseases, but at the same token, a technology that goes into the heart of the precision medicine that be able to treat the patient with the better safety, less side effect, more specifically, and much higher response rates. So when we started that journey, we focus on 2 major platforms. One of them is our gene therapy platform, which is the Gorilla AdenoVerse platform, which I'm going to be talking a lot about it. And the other one was our cell therapy platform, which was our overnight CAR T platform. So starting with the AdenoVerse platforms. AdenoVerse platform, a number of drugs have shown that viral vectors, they can be used in introduction of certain genes and correct some of the rare diseases, even in oncology. But the issue is the limitation that these adenoviral platforms had. And the limitation is majority of the humans, they have already sort of a prior seroimmunity to this because they have been exposed to these viruses before. So when you start giving this as a treatment, in a best case scenario, you can give it once or twice. And then it's like shooting a blank because your immune system reacts to it and it neutralizes the activity of these vectors. So having known the whole history, part of the fact for us in a gene therapy was we differentiate ourselves in such a way that we come up with the vectors that overcomes that problems, meaning that the immune system has not seen it and you can give it in a continuous fashion. That's number one. Number two, they have a molecular base or a capacity that you can include many epitopes or genes in them. And I want to clarify, this is not a CRISPR platform. This is not something that you are sending something and mutating a gene in the patient. This is basically viral vectors that what we have developed, they are non-replicating, that they are very safe. And what they do is actually educate your own immune system to recognize the epitopes and then take care of, for instance, the tumors that they carry that epitopes. So this is different when we talk about there are different fields of gene therapy. So that was part of the very first thing. And we went with the Gorilla AdenoVerse platform, which, by the way, Precigen has the full IP around this platform. And we differentiated that very well from all the other existing platforms in a number of ways. One is that it has a capacity to go to 12 kb, include many epitopes, many genes. When you're looking at other viruses, they have a capacity of, at best, close to 5. These vectors, they are gorilla vectors. We have shown that majority of the people have either no seroprevalence, meaning no previous immunity, or very, very little. So you can give them in a repeated fashion, and they will be activating your own T cell responses, your own army of the body. They keep activating it. And that's very important because an army that can come only to a battle once and it's lost, it's not an army, as you can imagine. The army that you want to develop is a robust army that not only they can win the battle, but they can continue to surveil your body. And if any issue comes from within again, they can again destroy that. And that's what you want to build in a precision medicine. And that's exactly how we differentiated these gorilla adenoviral platforms. And we brought it from the discovery all the way to the clinic, and especially with our RRP, recurrent respiratory papillomatosis, which is one of the rare diseases that the patients, I will go through it a little bit later, develop these benign tumors in the trachea and on the vocal cord. It's a devastating disease. And this is our priority program that is a front runner right now. And actually, we received the PDUFA date of August 27th from FDA. And we have done that in the matter of the past 4 years. So that is one of the major, and we also have applied that now to other cancers, such as cervical cancers and head and neck. We provided that data at ASCO. On the second part of the technology that Precigen has put forward is our cell therapy. And this has been a very, very interesting field. Clearly, with the use of the classical CAR T, the field has proven that the CAR T and the cell therapy making a specific T cells that they can go in and identify the tumors and destroy them. This is amazing. The problem with the field that they faced was the basically shortcomings that was related with the classical lentiviral CAR Ts. And that was the issue that the T cells can only express one CAR because lentivirus again, being a virus, has a limited really capability of how many genes you can put it in. So you can only put one thing. You don't have any safety switches to turn on and off these T cells that you have generated outside when you introduce them back to the patient. At the same token, the biggest issue has been the manufacturing of this. The manufacturing, it used to take 8 weeks. Everybody has been shortening, but even with that, the fastest are close to 2 weeks. And the shorter that you make that time, actually, the rate of the failure becomes higher in the manufacturing. It's just simply is not something that the society can take, and the time that it takes to get to the patient. A lot of these patients, every day counts for them. They don't have months to wait for a manufacturing process. And these CAR-Ts are generated in a sense of in centralized manufacturing sites, which we saw, for instance, during COVID. Once they were shut down, there is no treatment for these patients anymore. So all of those issues, and the field thought, and they have put a lot of effort also off the shelf, but unfortunately the off the shelf saw the same different problem because they use lentivirus. They have to basically desensitize the patient tremendously. The costs are still similar and the manufacturing. So Precigen, upon its start, we decided if we are going after cell therapy, we are going after a platform that differentiates itself. And that platform we refer to as the Ultra CAR-Ts. And these CAR-Ts, first of all, we use non-viral base, which we have now advanced the platform internally. This is not the old non-viral platforms that existed. So since you don't use a lentivirus, you can generate these CAR-Ts directly in the hospitals. But since we use plasmids to integrate our specific CARs, and also we have designed in such a way that this plasmid can carry a safety switch with them, and also what I refer to as membrane-bound IL-15, which is the backpack of food for these T cells. So you don't need to activate them and expand them outside. This is done overnight at the hospital. And we also generated an ultraparator, which is, again, specific to Precigen. And we can now basically transfect 4 billion T cells of a patient under 12 minutes with the CAR-Ts. And then overnight, just rest them. Next day, the cells of the patient are infused back to the same patient. So they are not allogeneic cells. They don't need to go through expanded manufacturing. Patient doesn't need to wait. If they need to be redosed, you can just as easily overnight redose them. Another batch can be made and they redose them. For instance, any of the major hospitals can do this, just as they do bone marrow transplant. No difference, with a very much lower cost. So that's what we focused on, and we brought also a number of drugs into the clinic, phase 1, phase 1Bs, and we have finished, for instance, we have shown data in AML. So these has been the two major platforms that Precigen has brought forward and with the drugs that are associated with it.
Well, thank you for that education, Helen. Most guests need to be prompted to ask a lot of questions about where they are and where they're going. But basically, you've laid out very clearly exactly where Precigen is and where you are with your platforms. And also, I would imagine, we didn't ask about the name Precigen, but I would imagine it relates to precision and genes. So if you look at really some of the hot spots right now in bio, it's cell and gene therapy and it's precision technology. And 5 years ago, you guys recognized that that was going to be an emerging field that was really needing a lot of new innovation, and you're helping bring innovation to that field. The other thing that I really like is it's almost like reading The Art of War when you talk about army and battles and guerrilla warfare. Basically, we all think about the antibodies and the way our body reacts to that. And we really need to be stronger in the way that we respond. Our immune system responds to these viruses that are attacking. So it's a very good analogy in the way that you're presenting what Precigen's goals are in the way you're going to treat with immunotherapy.
No, you're absolutely right, Rich. The whole purpose of really immunotherapy or immuno-oncology in cases of cancer is really to inform your immune system in a right way to understand the enemy from within. Now, immune system usually is very good at identifying the bacteria, some of the viruses that they are exposed to, and combat that. Where immune system usually has a problem is if the enemy is from within, like the cancer cells, because these cancer cells are part of you. So like any good army, they defend the body from anything from outside, but they are not used to see enemy from within, and they don't like that, and they don't recognize it. And the majority of the issue that we have in, especially in cancer and some of the rare diseases like RRP, is that the immune system, either in time or in general, becomes exhausted to understand and see these enemies from within. And by the time that they even start recognizing it, it's too late because there is metastasis all over the body and the immune system has become exhausted at that point. And our approach is really to inform the immune system from as soon as possible and arm it. I always give the analogy, immune system is like a general army of the body. And when you go in with this specific treatments such as our Gorilla AdenoVerse platform for RRP or head and neck cancer, cervical cancers, or CAR-Ts for that matter, what you are doing is you are introducing a very, very trained part of the army, which would be equivalent to your Marines, for instance. They are well trained. They see that specific disease, and then they can go in and destroy that enemy from within. So that's the simplest way to explain it.
Yeah, it's a great way to explain it to the person who is not really dealing with this on an everyday basis, really. You mentioned you got recently the FDA priority review of your PRGN 2012 related to RRP. Talk a little bit, now that you've gotten that priority review, what are the next steps that you have to go through for the FDA to get to an approval for that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the RRP, this recurrent respiratory papillomatosis, this is a rare disease that the patients for the past 50 years, they have no treatment to this disease. And the patients can have this disease from childhood when the child passes through the birth canal of the mother and they become infected with HPV 6 and 11. And they start developing these benign tumors that occur in the trachea, so they can breathe, or on their vocal cords, and they can't speak. And the only treatment that basically is there is multiple surgeries in order to clear these tumors. And it's not that because the field has not tried, basically everything that has been out there has been tried on these patients and nothing has worked. So there was no FDA approved drug for this patient population. And when we started working on this in 2020, we started a discovery program because we thought our Gorilla AdenoVerse platform will be a perfect platform to address this disease. Now, what we showed in the past years, which has led to this basically priority review by FDA, the submission of our rolling BLA and acceptance of filing by FDA, was the pivotal data that we showed at ASCO last year, both from our phase 1 and phase 2, which FDA agreed that they can serve as a pivotal. For the first time in a history of this disease, we treated the patients, adult patients. Some of them, they had this from childhood, and some of them as adult, they get this through infection. And we showed that if we treat these patients with a course of 4, and their sub-Q injection of the PRGN 2012, we achieve 51% complete responses. And the way the complete response was defined, that in at least the 1 year minimum, these patients should have not required any surgery. And we had patients that they had per year required 10 surgeries. You can imagine every 6 weeks they are in OR to receive a surgery. And we also have followed these patients, and now the median point is past 24 months, and some of our patients have passed the 3 years that they have not required any surgery whatsoever. And this is really amazing for this patient population. So based on that, the FDA allowed us to submit a rolling BLA in 2024. We finished our submission, and in February, the FDA has granted us, basically accepted, filed the BLA, and the rapid review.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, because the patients as well as the employees of Precigen would both like that approval. But we're talking with Helen Sabzevari, who's the CEO of Precigen. One of the challenges, Helen, for a CEO of an emerging bio company is you have so many opportunities, but so many limited resources to attack those opportunities. And you have two platforms, the gene therapy and the CAR T. So when you look at where you are with your existing pipeline, and when you have platform technologies, they basically have the ability to treat many different diseases. How do you determine your priorities and your focus for Precigen to make certain you stay on point to hit some of the short-term goals as well as prepare for the long-term strategy of the company?
It's an excellent question. And actually, it became even more relevant than ever during the pandemic, because Precigen was really formed as the pandemic started in 2020. And you can imagine, both from an economical perspective and the shutdowns and everything, one of the things that was very evident to us from the very beginning, we are a small company, but we are extremely focused and science-driven. But at the same token, from the very beginning, we put a strategy forward that we have to have a right science for a right indication with the right clinical strategy. And a lot of people, the way they approach is, well, we go after one thing and it's more like a Hail Mary type of approach. That is not the way we approach things at Precigen. So during the first year of Precigen, what we were really focusing is, first of all, which one of these platforms will perform and be able to scale up for a clinic and commercialization eventually from the very beginning. And then also choosing a right indication. So for what you see, for instance, we focused our Gorilla AdenoVerse platform on HPV-related cancers and rare disease. And we focused our UltraCAR with the differentiation that it had on certain diseases in hematology, as well as in solid tumors like ovarian cancer, as well as the AML, and see the power of the platform. Because if the platform was not functioning, we were not going to be continuing with a platform that will not be meeting the needs and be differentiated. Luckily for Precigen, both platforms really responded extremely well in the clinic. Now, that is a great opportunity, but as you mentioned, for a small biotech, especially during a pandemic, this becomes also a difficult situation. How do you choose? And the way we have done it technically was, we saw the result we were getting on RRP. So we put a lot of efforts on advancing that clinical program rapidly, because this was an indication that for the patients, there was nothing in front of them. Where always biotechs have limitation is the amount of resources that they have. So in a lot of these platforms, when you bring them to the certain level, such as we have done for the UltraCAR, and we have publicly mentioned that, now we are in a position that we have the data and we can have the discussions for the partnerships. And that way we can, by infusion of resources, we can advance this paradigm, which will change the paradigm for the field, because there is no technology, to my knowledge, that can do what ultra CAR T can do, for instance. So we continuously balance our resources, and based on where we see the need, also the priority, we reprioritize. And as I mentioned, as a CEO, I am not fond of necessarily Hail Marys and hoping and wishing that something happens, whereas take an educated position based on our science, advancement in the clinic, and resources that we had, and understand where you need to advance one thing. And as much as we are all scientists and we love our scientific curiosity, but we have to be much more focused and understand that when is the time to advance one program over the other. And this has been our mantra always for Precigen.
I'm sure it's one of the biggest challenges for someone who starts as a bench scientist and makes the progression to be the CEO of a company, having to make the decisions on where that science should be focused. So it sounds like you're doing a good job in prioritization. Now, we talked about the company and the pipeline and the FDA and where you're at. The other thing is location. Precigen could have been formed anywhere in the United States, but ultimately the decision was made to form it right here in Montgomery County, Maryland, in Germantown. Why was that decision made? And has that been a good decision for the company, looking at all the resources and emerging bio company needs, really from R&D and manufacturing and clinical and regulatory, marketing, commercialization as you get closer to that commercial phase? So talk a little bit about your location here and the strengths and some of the challenges that you may have.
So as someone who traveled quite a lot during my career, I did my postdocs in California. I came back. My PhDs were done in New York. And then I came to NIH and I lived in Maryland for 10 years. And then as a global head of Merck KGaA, I was based in Boston and in Germany, and also traveling through Japan and China as a global head. And I had seen a lot of the base, especially during the time, the Boston, for instance, when it had become a biotech hub. When I started moving to the biotech, I realized that actually Maryland is one of the best areas for being a biotechnology corridor. And the reason for that was the experience that I had at NIH, which was at the cutting edge at the time for really innovation in the new research, and also translational activities they had, and also all the other hospitals that exist at Georgetown, Washington, Hopkins, the University of Maryland. So there was a pool of talent and innovation that existed in this area that was amazing to use as a resources, and also for collaboration, which is really incredible. And we have shown that, for instance, that with the NIH work that we have done in the past 4 years, and also even when I was at Merck KGaA, collaborations that I had with NIH. So that has been a very, very important part of, and the location, and also the location of the FDA being very close, and the regulatory bodies. So all of that, plus that Maryland offers, like Montgomery County and Maryland Tech, that, for instance, this organization, they are extremely helpful to advancing the biotechs and making this as a hub. Compared to Boston, all of my colleagues that they are still CEOs of Boston, and the rents and everything else that you have to pay for the resources, Maryland is by far in a much better situation, especially for biotechs that they have limited resources to start as a startup, and a support that you receive from Maryland. And I think all of that, and also the talent that we could bring to the company from all these different organizations that they exist here, it really has made this decision very easy for us, that we focused our headquarters in Germantown and has been interacting and collaborating with all the centers of excellence here. And I can tell you, it has been very rewarding and amazing in a speed that we have been able to develop the drug products and the drugs for the various diseases.
Right. Thank you. I think you're a great ambassador for Maryland, Montgomery County, and the BioHealth Capital Region. And one of the things we talk about all the time is when you look at San Francisco and Boston and the cost, or New York City, the cost associated with it, the quality of life that you have, the commute that you have to get to your organization, and you compare that to what you have in Maryland and how much further your dollar goes in running a company in Maryland versus being in one of those large centers where you have all of that congestion and the high cost. It's really a good decision. And Helen, you are a poster child for why companies should be in Maryland. And maybe we can use you in the future to help sell some other people as to why they should locate here.
I think a lot of people are locating. Actually, last night, it's amazing the number of great companies that they are in Maryland, biotech. But also now, as you have seen, a lot of large pharma are moving into AstraZeneca and KGaA. So I think this is becoming realized that this is really the Eastern corridor for the United States for the biotech and pharma.
Let's close by just talking a little bit about the future. Talk about your future vision, short-term, long-term, and what are your goals for the company and personal goals for Helen?
So I think for us, we always have been really patient-oriented. And I say that a lot of people, sometimes they believe these are slogans. For us, it's not a slogan. It's a reality of our life, where we come from, how our careers have formed. I have seen patients that sat in front of us, and unfortunately, they have no other option. And there is not a day that goes by, either in my own activities or the whole Precigen, that is not upfront for us, that we have a responsibility and accountability to the society. And based on the talent that we have been given, we feel the weight of that accountability and responsibility. So our priority dictates to us, get PRG in 2012, and then the next steps upon commercialization is to advance the rest of the portfolio.
Thank you, Helen. Well, we've been talking to Helen Sabzevari, who's the president, CEO, but also the general of the Precigen Army, and been an excellent guest today. It's nice to talk to emerging bio companies in the BioHealth Capital Region that really are focused, and you are definitely focused. There's no question about that, with significant potential and taking advantage of all the assets that we have around you. And I would imagine if there's any strategic partners that are listening to this, Helen would love to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And I also saw on the website, you're still looking for quality people to join Precigen. So if anybody is looking for a role that might fit a gap that Precigen is looking for, you can find it on the Precigen website. And we want to wish you the best of luck as you focus on your PRGN 2012 and getting that approved in 2025, which would be great for you, all of your employees, and the patients that would be treated by this.
Thank you very much, Rich, and thank you for having us. This has been a great opportunity, and I thank also your listeners. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.